So first of all, thanks for taking the time to have this call with me today. I really appreciate it. Maybe you just want to go ahead and tell everybody who you are and how you got into the business and what you got going on.
Jonathan Wilcox is the name. I've been in the truck business for just under a year. I spent 25 years in finance, kind of realized about 8 years ago I enjoyed having my own businesses, owned car washes, owned oil change, kind of wanted to leave the corporate world. I was the chief investment officer managing $2 billion for an insurance company. Kind of wanted to get out and do my own thing and be in control of my own destiny. I always felt like I was worth a lot more than what I was getting paid. And if I had my own business, I could prove myself right or wrong. And I was willing to bet on myself.
Yeah. And you got a couple now, don't you? A couple businesses?
I own an oil change and a car wash about 20 minutes away from here. And then I have the truck repair business as well. And then I'm a silent partner in another venture, we'll just call it. It's a home remediation roll-up.
Awesome. So would you say you made the right choice leaving the investment banking world?
You know, I made a lot more exciting choice. I know that.
There you go.
The emotion, you know, no day is the same here. The emotions are higher and lower. It's a lot more variation. I think it'll be the right choice in the long run.
Yeah.
So
well, hey, believe it or not,
it takes a lot of effort to get it rolling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a different ballgame, but believe it or not, you're not the only guy I've heard that story from. I've actually talked to a few guys in the industry who have come from the banking world and just said, I'm sick of being on the sidelines. I kind of want to jump in and, control the day-to-day myself. So that's cool. You opened Alpha Fleet a little bit, less than a year ago, and you guys are growing fairly rapidly from what it seems like. Well, one of the two big challenges you guys have been really trying to solve for is techs. Right, like getting reliable techs. I think you figured that part out for the most part. Is that correct?
I'm getting there. It's always I don't think it's ever a destination. It's always a journey. You got to find these guys, treat them well, and then they got to want to work for you too. It's a relationship. It's not I'm their boss and they do this, because they can leave. There's a lot of places out there. There's places that pay more than I do, but I'm figuring out the qualities I like, what I want them to look like.
And that right now, you're adding on to it, but you have a solid base now, right? Like when we first started meeting, or when we first met, I think you had like one main guy you relied on, and since then you have, is it 2 or 3 guys now?
When we started, I had one. I ramped that. I quickly needed to add another one, and I'm looking to add a third pretty soon here. A little bit of seasonality down in Oklahoma, where January and February tend to be a little slower, even March to a certain degree. But once the heat hits, starting in April, things start to break again.
So you got the techs figured out. In regards to the marketing side, I could tell the story, or maybe you want to tell the story of how you remember you and I first getting in contact and our first deal together.
Yes, I'll even give a little background. Do you want the background?
Sure.
I was with a competitor SEO company, but I was one of 7 customers that I had identified that they had in probably a 15-mile radius of me. And I got a call one day for somebody a mile down the road needing a tow. And I said, well, why? Coming from the international dealer, I said, well, why are you needing a tow? They're like, they blew up my engine. I was like, well, I can replace your engine. And it turns out they were taking them to another of the same SEO and ads providers shop to get that engine done. They had already been in contact with them. And I realized...
if what I'm hearing is correct, you're saying you realize one of the main things you didn't like about the other agency you were working with was that they were also working with your competitors. But what had happened is possibly one of your ads was actually directing to the other shop, or vice versa. Is that what you're saying?
Just one of the competitors' ads was up there instead of mine for a really big job a mile away from me. And I had the realization that I will never be their biggest customer. I will never be their most important customer. And all the other customers they currently had all been there longer than me. So I was always going to be getting table scraps. And I started to look for other solutions. And I did what every sort of tech savvy person does. I just started talking around Facebook. I need a diesel repair shop SEO provider.
Oh, you mean you're talking and Facebook's listening?
Yep. I put it in the search to make it a little more easy, and there was a few that popped up, and I liked Corey. Yeah. So the rest is history.
The first couple of days we started working together, you were getting calls and you had to send them away because you didn't have the text, and I was thinking that it wasn't going to work out. And then sure enough, a couple of days later, you had already had the text and were able to keep sending the calls. So that was actually pretty interesting for me, because I haven't usually seen it go like that before.
My entire life, I've just had to get my hands on things and experience things, and then I figure it out. For some reason, I don't always work well figuring it out ahead of time, but as soon as I get in there and do it, I figure it out.
Well, exactly. And, a lot of people don't see it like this, but for us, like as an agency to work with somebody like that, like there's a risk involved. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to spend a bunch of money on implementation. You got to do a lot of stuff, and you get all set up, and then you start sending calls, and then it doesn't work. You lost a bunch of time and you lost money. So for that reason, usually we try to find people who already have those techs, because then there's not really a gamble. But obviously you were able to show me that hey, if you make make a good bet on the right guy, he's gonna make it happen. So okay, so you worked with another diesel specific agency in the past, and that was your experience. You left because you didn't like the fact that they had been working with your competitors. However, you did know that some of the advertising that they were doing was driving customers, correct?
Yeah. I'd probably grown from 0 to, I had about 30,000 in business roughly with one tech in my third month.
Yeah, and that was largely with Google Ads, right? Do you remember how much you were spending?
Oh, that was $500 a month, and then another 500 for them to run it. And it scaled really dollar for dollar. So if I would have been spending $2,500 in Google Ads, it was going to be $2,500 for them to run
management fees. So like if they were charging you a 50% of ad spend, basically. Yeah. Or 100% of ad spend. Okay. But regardless,
they did other things with it as well. There were other things that kind of came in. They're like Facebook or SEO and more stuff with the website.
Yeah, plus that's what I was gonna say. At least just like when you get a website online, you get a Google listing up, you do some basic stuff, like you're gonna start getting a decent amount of traffic out of the gate for sure. But then when you want to scale it, right, you pump ads, and you had done that, and it had done okay for you. Obviously generated some business and some ROI. And then after that, I think you moved over to, was it a local guy who you were working with, but it was definitely someone non-industry specific, correct?
Non-industry specific. And he created a different website for me, which I've since modified and done some things myself on. And then he was running the ads, but I think he'd try to use AI for the ads, or a VA, cheap somebody from another country. And I was getting AAA lockout calls where they thought it was going to be free with me showing up. Yeah,
it's interesting, because that's often the outcome that we see when people try to work with agencies who are not specific to diesel. That's almost always the case. They end up getting calls and spending money, but it's largely on like AAA, regular passenger vehicle, roadside, etc. And it sounds like that's the same thing that happened with you.
Yep, it was business just tanked because
Gotcha.
I got rid of the other firm.
And then when we started working together, obviously one of the things that I came to you and said was, hey, your business is doing 30 grand now. You want to obviously take it to the next level. You got to spend more in ads. I think right out of the gate, you started around spending 2 or 3 grand right away.
I think it was like 1,500, but it was either like 50 or 75 a day, one of those two.
Yeah, I think it was 80 a day. We kicked it off at,
and it was a noticeable difference coming up.
Okay.
On the amount of phone calls.
And when you say noticeable difference, like what do you mean? Like on a day-to-day?
The quality of the calls changed. The frequency of the calls changed. I was getting more semi-truck specific calls. I was, not getting those AAA lockouts. I was getting people genuinely needing help in my target market.
And I think actually in our first month or in our second month working together, there was a pretty big transmission job that came in. Do you remember what that total ticket size was?
It was about 15 grand. Yeah, he needed a new actuator, when we got in there, we saw his fan clutch was fairly rusted. I ended up getting a new clutch and one other piece on there that's escaping me at the moment, but it ended up, we had to take transmission off, redo all that stuff. There was a good chunk. It was
Gotcha.
a nice chunk.
And that was just like a small little customer, right? Who just
Yep.
happened to need a big job.
Yep, exactly.
Interesting. It's really interesting. I'd love to hear that stuff because there's a big misconception out there that you run Google Ads and you get $500 patch jobs from guys who have no money and don't want to pay, and you can't get any bigger jobs. So
Oh no, you definitely can. So we
Yeah.
had another transmission that was going to be 9,000 come in the other day that the guy just can't afford it. We get the transmission for 6. He was hoping to pay only 5.
So what do you do in a situation with a guy like that?
There wasn't a whole lot we could do. We spoke to LKQ and they're like, you can't really just put a manual look up any transmission on this. It has to be matched.
Okay.
So there, unfortunately, we did look for a used transmission, but those were still $5,000.
Is there ever a world where it makes sense to try to buy the guy's truck from him when he can't afford the repair, or no?
There is at some point. I don't know what those exact numbers are. I actually brought that up to my lead tech. It's like we get the transmission. I think our cost was $4,100. Our labor costs on it were about $2,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, it costs us $4,000. I know it's not going to take you 10 hours to put it on. He's like, yeah, it'd probably take me 5 to do it. I'm like, what if we got this? And then he's like, I don't know that you want it on that one. That guy's had to put a lot of other stuff in there. Usually when a lot of other stuff's going wrong, it kind of turns into a money pit.
Jonathan, we've been working together for maybe 5 or 6 months now. What would you say the main difference is working with my team? Like not in terms of results or anything like that, but just like day to day working with my team members that work on your account.
They're very accessible. And I like that a lot. I call Gabe with a question. He either picks up or he calls me back fairly quickly. There's never anything that is 24 hours later unless he's out of town. None of that. We have conversations. I can bounce ideas off them. I can discuss things. Sometimes I like just talking about things and seeing if it makes sense, kind of educating myself, working through something to see, is this going to make sense or no? And both you and Gabe are willing to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like what you're describing is that our team is accessible and doesn't leave you hanging, basically. I mean, for
very
me,
accessible, yes, and responsive, flexible, accessible.
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of like baseline, right? I feel like any organization can have good customer service in terms of responsiveness if they just, set the systems up and focus on it. Tell me a little bit about strategy. How is my team when it comes to strategy? Do you feel like you are getting good strategy from us that actually helps you solve your issues, or do you feel like it's more generalized, or how's it compare to other companies you've worked with?
I think it's good. I don't get all yeses, let's do it, which would be a red flag for me. There's been things I've discussed with Gabe and he's like, nah, that's not really the best way to do that one. Here's what we see and here's how we do it. Sometimes we've done that, especially breaking up Google Ads, trying to target something else. He's like, I don't think that would work. Here's what the data says. Let's try it this way.
Yeah, well, and I know that's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes because it's like, with some people, it's like, hey, I know this is a good idea. I want to do this. Like, let's do this. And then they're telling you no. And then you feel like, oh, I should have done it. And then there's other times where it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And that would, it's a good thing you blocked me off from that. Is it kind of both ways or do you feel like you're doing a good job?
Very much a partnership. I feel like he's right. And that's really what I care about. Right. I don't care if my idea works. I care that, if I have an idea and it's something sort of tangent to that and that'll work, let's try that, go down that tangent.
What are your thoughts on our system? Like where in terms of transparency and how you can validate the leads and the quality and stuff like that. What would you say about that system? To
be honest, I haven't looked at the DigiRep login as much as I should. I know it's there. I just haven't looked at it that much.
Okay, but you do know that if you do look at it, you have looked at it before, right? And
yeah, I've looked at it. I've been through there, and if I have questions, I know I just ask, and I'll get a response quick.
All right, cool. So let's talk about results. So I think that you said you guys were up to about 30K before when we started working together. talk to us about where we're at now. And obviously, if you want to talk about that in-frame story to whatever level
Oh,
you're comfortable, we can talk about that. But just to kind of put some numbers or even just percentage growth into where we're at right now, what would you say we've been able to accomplish in terms of like bottom line result?
we were about 30 last month. With 28 days in February, we were at 55,000 in revenue.
Sorry,
Every
when you say last month 30, you mean when we started you were at 30, and then last month we finished 55?
Yes.
Okay.
January, we had 50. February, with 3 fewer days, we had 55. March, I think we'll be in the 50s again, maybe touch 60 if we get a little lucky. But
Sure.
it's going well. So, and it's been good growth. We started in September. I want to say like August, we did 30, or maybe September it was 30. October was in the low 40s. November and December were in the mid to high 40s in that order. And it's been steady growth.
Gotcha. So it sounds like basically you started with a nice jump of like 50%. Of course, as soon as you jacked your ad spend, you
Yeah.
jumped up about 50 points, and then since then you have been growing by maybe like 15% per month consistently for the last 6 months. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's probably fair. And I think the additional context that makes that even more impressive for what you guys have done has been January and February tend to be slower in Oklahoma.
100%.
I've been
100%.
hearing, I know people at the dealers that have been telling me it's been slow since September for them. And I'm like,
Sure.
I'm not slow. My guys are working.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, that's honestly like why we do this. If I can help somebody even partially double their sales or get close to it, I know that probably makes a bigger impact on even just like how you sleep at night as a business owner. You know what I mean? With
Yeah.
that little higher level of stability. So that's fantastic to hear. I think we were actually almost going to touch 100, or maybe it was 90 in December, but we had an in frame that I guess one of the technicians,
Messed up.
we couldn't get it done, but that was I think you mentioned a $35,000 jump there that would have been a pretty wild story. So I think that's about it. Is there anything else that you want to say or that we should cover here?
I don't think so. I've been very happy with everything you guys have done. Yeah, you guys are valuable partners. I look forward to expanding as I grow and giving you more money to do more marketing as we grow.
Oh yeah, love it, man. Well, as soon as you get that next tech in, let us know, and we'll throw
We'll
some more
take the
fuel
ad
on the
spend up.
fire.
We'll do some other things, I'm certain.
Absolutely. Okay, Jonathan. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time, man. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yep,
Honestly.
no problem. Appreciate you very much so.
Okay, man. Sounds good. Well, we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Yep.